Welcome back to These Things Are Written on this Monday. As we begin a new week, we are wrapping up the book of Acts during this week. We are continuing with chapter 27, beginning with verse 27. Paul and his shipmates are stuck in a storm out on the Mediterranean Sea. It came upon them suddenly on his trip to Rome. And we continue our reading again with verse 27 as we hear more of what happened during that shipwreck. When the 14th night had come, as we were being driven across the Adriatic Sea, about midnight, the sailors suspected that they were nearing land. So they took a sounding and found 20 fathoms. A little further on, they took a sounding and found 15 fathoms. And fearing that we might run on the rocks, they let down 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. And as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship and had lowered the ship's boat into the sea under the pretense of laying out anchors from the bow, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, "Unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved." Then the soldiers cut away the ropes from the ship's boat and let it go. As day was about to dawn, Paul urged them all to take some food, saying, "Today is the 14th day that you have continued in suspense and without food, having taken nothing. Therefore I urge you to take some food, for it will give you strength, for not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you." And when he had said these things, he took bread, and giving thanks to God in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat. Then they were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. We were in all 276 persons in the ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. Interesting passage, as again, Luke loves to tell the details of the journey, especially this journey that he was on. It says that they took a reading and found, as they were going in the night, and found the reading to be 20 fathoms, about 120 feet deep to the bottom of the sea where they were. And then a little while later, it said it was 90. They put the anchors in to be able to slow the boat down, because at least until daylight, because without daylight, they really had no idea how close they were to the shore, and the ship would be in trouble if they ran upon rocks. The sailors tried to escape on the small boats, but Paul and the centurion stopped them, and the soldiers. They tried to escape because a smaller boat would be less likely to have a huge crash as a large boat would. Paul said God would save them all, yet the sailors were taking matters into their own hands, so they had to be stopped. They had gone 14 days without food on rough sea. Now, I'm sure they were kind of motion sick, seasick, and that's why they weren't able to eat anything. In fact, I almost get seasick just even thinking about it. But Paul reminded them all of God's promise to him, and in turn, God's promise to them as well. Paul gives thanks to God, the one true God, in front of everybody, breaks the bread, eats it, and others do the same because of Paul's encouragement. The main takeaway from this is to encourage others, especially during difficult times, to be like Paul, who I'm guessing learned it from Barnabas, who he was with earlier in his journeys. That need to encourage others, especially in the midst of struggles, in the midst of difficulties. You know, it's easy, to be honest, to be kind of whiny, to be complaining in times like this, where the pandemic still seems to be going. In fact, it's not letting up much here in Columbus. It's easy to complain. It's easy to be negative. But maybe we instead should be pointing to God's promises that he gives to us. His promise that he will never leave us nor forsake us. His promise that nothing can separate us from his love that he has for each of us through Jesus Christ. Not even a silly pandemic, not an election coming up, not riots that seem to be happening all over our country. But we point to the promises that God gives to us. The promise that he gives to us in our baptism, the promise he gives to us in his word, the promises that he gives to us throughout our lives. Remember, God is with you. Nothing can pull you from his grip. And these things of the earth will pass away one day. We look forward to that time, to celebrating the fulfillment of that final promise of the resurrection one day. But until then, we pray that God will simply keep us in his care, guide us through this day, give us that encouragement that we need every day through his word. I pray that God will give you his encouragement today and always. God bless, and we will see you tomorrow.